Lake Powell is shrinking, but not everyone thinks that's a bad thing. The lake's level is at about 26% of average, and it will probably be lower than that by October. A group called the Glen Canyon Institute, they've long wanted to completely drain Lake Powell.
For decades, people traveled across the American Southwest to witness one of the largest reservoirs ever created. Stretching through the red rock deserts of Utah and Arizona, Lake Powell stood as a monument to modern engineering, a vast body of water carved into some of the most spectacular canyon country on Earth. Today, that same reservoir is revealing a very different story. As water levels continue to fall, landscapes that vanished beneath the lake more than 60 years ago are emerging once again. Ancient sandstone chambers, forgotten river channels, archaeological sites, hidden waterfalls, and narrow slot canyons are reappearing after spending generations underwater. Places that many believed were lost forever are slowly returning to daylight. What visitors are witnessing is both breathtaking and unsettling, because every canyon revealed by the retreating shoreline is also evidence of a growing crisis unfolding across the Colorado River Basin. The same shrinking reservoir that is uncovering pieces of the past is raising serious concerns about the future of water and energy supplies for millions of Americans. Lake Powell has become a place where history is resurfacing at the exact moment the region faces one of its greatest environmental challenges. A hidden world emerging from the depths. For much of the 20th century, the canyons of Glen Canyon were considered among the hidden treasures of the American Southwest. Before the construction of Glen Canyon Dam, explorers described the landscape filled with towering sandstone walls, crystal-clear springs, natural arches, waterfalls, and winding river passages that stretched for hundreds of miles. Many believed it rivaled even the beauty of the Grand Canyon. But most of that landscape disappeared when the Colorado River was dammed. Beginning in the 1960s, water slowly filled the canyon system behind the newly completed dam. As water levels expanded, it submerged countless natural landmarks beneath hundreds of feet of water. Entire side canyons vanished. Ancient pathways disappeared. Waterfalls stopped flowing. Places that had existed unchanged for thousands of years were swallowed by the rising lake. For generations afterward, many Americans knew these locations only through old photographs and stories told by those who had visited before the flooding. Now, as Lake Powell declines, many of those long-hidden features are returning. One of the most remarkable examples is Cathedral in the Desert, a stunning sandstone amphitheater tucked deep within a narrow canyon. Before inundation, travelers considered it one of the most beautiful natural formations in the region. Its soaring rock walls enclosed a tranquil chamber where a waterfall cascaded into a pool below. When the reservoir rose, the entire canyon disappeared beneath the lake. For decades, it remained submerged and inaccessible. Today, the waterfall flows once again. The canyon walls stand exposed to sunlight. Vegetation has begun reclaiming the canyon floor. Visitors can once again walk through a landscape that many believed they would never see outside historical photographs. And Cathedral in the Desert is far from the only place making a comeback. Across the reservoir, countless side canyons are reappearing. Former lake coves are transforming back into winding sandstone corridors. Springs that had remained underwater for generations are resurfacing. Native plants are spreading across exposed shorelines, slowly rebuilding habitats that vanished decades ago. With every decline in water level, another piece of Glen Canyon returns. How Lake Powell came into existence. The story begins during an era when the American West was rapidly expanding. Following World War II, growing cities and agricultural regions demanded greater control over water resources. Federal planners viewed the Colorado River as the key to supporting future development throughout the Southwest. The solution was ambitious: engineers proposed constructing a massive dam capable of storing enormous volumes of water while generating hydroelectric power for the region. Construction of Glen Canyon Dam began in the 1950s. The project required diverting the Colorado River and erecting a concrete structure towering more than 700 feet above the canyon floor. When the diversion tunnels were finally sealed in 1963, the river began backing up behind the dam. Year after year, water spread farther into the surrounding canyon system. By the time the reservoir reached full capacity, it stretched nearly 186 miles across Arizona and Utah, creating one of the largest artificial lakes in the United States. The reservoir held enough water to support millions of residents, irrigate farmland, and generate electricity throughout the Southwest. At the time, the achievement was celebrated as a triumph of engineering and resource management. Yet even during construction, critics warned about what would be lost. Environmental advocates argued that one of America's most extraordinary canyon landscapes was being sacrificed beneath the rising water. Many of their concerns would later prove prophetic. Ancient stories hidden beneath the water. Long before dams, reservoirs, or modern cities existed, Glen Canyon served as home to indigenous peoples who lived, traveled, traded, and worshipped throughout the region. The canyon contains thousands of archaeological sites documenting centuries of human history. Stone dwellings cling to cliff faces. Ancient storage structures remain tucked into alcoves. Petroglyphs and pictographs preserve cultural traditions carved and painted onto sandstone walls. Historic trails trace routes used by generations of indigenous communities moving through the desert landscape. When Lake Powell was created, archaeologists launched extensive rescue efforts to document as many sites as possible before flooding occurred. Teams surveyed remote canyons, mapped ruins, collected artifacts, and recorded cultural features. Despite years of work, only a fraction of the area's archaeological resources could be studied before rising waters reached them. Many sites vanished beneath the reservoir without ever being fully documented. Now, some of those locations are reappearing. As shorelines retreat, ancient structures once hidden underwater are becoming visible again. Their return presents both opportunities and challenges. Researchers may gain access to information that has remained inaccessible for decades. At the same time, exposure increases vulnerability to erosion, vandalism, theft, and natural deterioration. Preserving these rediscovered cultural resources has become an urgent concern for archaeologists, tribal nations, and land managers alike. Nature begins reclaiming the canyon. The transformation occurring around Lake Powell extends beyond archaeological discoveries. The natural environment itself is changing rapidly. Areas that once consisted of open water are evolving into active river ecosystems. Streams are reoccupying former channels. Wetlands are developing along exposed shorelines. Native plants are spreading across exposed sediment, slowly rebuilding habitats that vanished decades ago. In several locations, beavers have begun constructing dams along waterways that had remained underwater for decades. Bird species are establishing nesting sites along emerging river corridors. Fish populations are adapting to changing aquatic conditions as sections of reservoir revert towards river environments. Perhaps the most dramatic changes are occurring where rivers enter the shrinking lake. For decades, incoming rivers deposited enormous amounts of sediment into the still reservoir waters. As lake levels decline, these accumulated sediments are becoming exposed. Towering walls of mud and silt now rise more than 100 feet above surrounding channels. Large sections periodically collapse, reshaping the landscape and creating new river pathways. Meanwhile, stretches of white water that disappeared when the reservoir was formed are increasingly resemble the untamed river environment that existed before the dam was built. The process is gradual but unmistakable. Parts of Lake Powell are slowly transforming back into Glen Canyon. The threat facing Glen Canyon Dam. While visitors celebrate the return of lost landscapes, engineers are paying attention to a different reality. The reservoir was not designed to operate at continuously low water levels. Hydroelectric generation depends on water pressure created by the height of the reservoir behind the dam. As water levels fall, the pressure available to drive turbines decreases. Lower pressure reduces efficiency and makes power production increasingly difficult. Over the past 2 decades, electricity generation at Glen Canyon Dam has already declined significantly as reservoir elevations dropped. Although the facility remains operational, experts continue monitoring critical thresholds. If water levels fall low enough, turbine operation could become impossible. The consequences would extend beyond the dam itself. Hydropower from Glen Canyon supports electrical systems across multiple states and tribal communities. Reduced production could increase dependence on alternative energy sources while increasing costs for consumers. Federal agencies have implemented emergency measures intended to maintain sufficient reservoir elevation, but long-term challenges remain unresolved. Why Lake Powell keeps shrinking? The reservoir's decline is not simply the result of a few dry years.